You know, Four Peaks, we just harp on freshest. And, you know, people always ask, why aren't we out of state? Well, it's because of the freshness. I don't really want our beer to travel across the country because it's really not going to taste that good. That's it. That's just the way it's going to be. People have just found, and you know, their taste buds have now, you know what fresh beer tastes like. And that's kind of one of my theories as far as why imports have gone way down. And I give the example of my wife. She used to drink Bass beer all the time and loved Bass. Now she can't even, you know, pick up a bottle of Bass because of just, you know, it's aged, you know, it's imported. It's kind of got a little bit aged oxidization, a little Band-Aid taste kind of flavor. And compare that with like a fresh pale ale, you know, it's just been brewed. There's just no comparison. So, you know, I think that's one reason why imports are down a little bit, because people are just really enjoying the fresh and taste of the beer. We haven't even left the state. You know, we just think that it's important to be as local as we can and keep that beer fresh and local. And, you know, the idea is to go to other cities and try their local beer. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea of fresh beer. You know, and Andy can talk later about beer breaking down and kind of how, you know, how it ages. And, you know, some beer you want to age, like barley wines. And he can talk more about that. Stronger, those are stronger, a lot more malt, a lot more hops, so they kind of act as a preservative. And, you know, the longer they age, the better they get. But for the most part, lighter beers like what you see up here, you know, it's all about freshness. And I think that's, you know, one big reason why craft beers have really taken off. I saw this. You can get this, all this information that I've downloaded is on beertown.org, and it's the Brewer Association. And they have some pretty good handouts as far as, this food one's really neat too, about pairing beers with food. And then they have the craft beer. I'll kind of talk a little bit about some of this, but this was interesting that each craft brewer has its own unique story, packages, and flavor profile, and your shopper wants to hear about all of it. Having a good craft selection elevates the shopper's perception. The craft shopper brings more dollars, and the craft brewer is better at communicating the message. And so, you know, like I love the first thing. You know, each craft brewery has a story. And that's what kind of makes it local, and you kind of feel proud of your local breweries because each one has a unique story. So what's neat is you can go into every place, and if you can get a manager or something to talk to you about the history of every brewery. Jerry's here. You know, he was brewing at Bandersnatch. We moved here in 91, and my old partner and I, we used to go harass him all the time at Bandersnatch. And, you know, he's like, you punks, you know, what do you guys know? So, I mean, Bandersnatch has a great history, you know, even though they've closed. But, you know, and that's what the cool thing is. I mean, like Four Peaks, you know, we moved in a building built in 1890. It was an old creamery. And, you know, I go on and on about the history of that. But, you know, what we did was when we thought about going into a building at Four Peaks, you know, we traveled around a lot around the country. And the real one theme about craft breweries was the renovation of old buildings. And that was kind of the one thing that, you know, that we took back here. And, you know, we looked at Phoenix, and there wasn't a lot of historical buildings. So we really lucked out when we found the building on 8th Street, the creamery. You look at any old building, you know, Wine Coop in Denver, you know, Tide House in San Jose. The big thing was just refurbishing Elysian in Seattle, refurbishing old buildings. So that was the one thing we really wanted to do was really go in and renovate an old brick building and put some tanks in it. So, you know, it even adds to the local stories and just the love of craft beer. So, the other thing I want to talk about was why is craft beer so popular? And it goes back to artisanal. You know, how we love our coffee, we love our bread, everything. You know, cheese. Everything on a local level and freshness, and I think there's just such a great renaissance that's going back to that. You know, the whole local foods, you know, farm to table, you know, this whole resurgence in freshness in farmers markets and things like that. That's what craft beer is, and that's one segment of this whole resurgence of freshness and local. And that's, you know, people thought craft beer was probably it was a fad, you know. It's, you know, you can talk about this more, but I would think that the larger brewers, you know, probably thought, you know, we'll just kind of keep them over here, and, you know, they're just kind of in our way a little bit, but not really. And now I think that the larger brewers, Bud Miller Coors, have really grasped the notion of craft beer. You know, as you can see by kind of by buying some, by distributing a lot of it, kind of, you know, Crescent Crown started, what is it?
World Class Beer.
Yeah, World Class Beer. So they have a whole division. It's just devoted to craft beer. So, you know, we're not going anywhere. Somewhere down the road, I was going to say that we're at 4% of the market, 4.9, something like that. You know, and I remember Kim Jordan from New Belgium 5-6 years ago said that we think that craft beer can go 10%, and everyone thought she was nuts. Well, that was probably we were at 2%. So right now we're at 5% of the total beer market. So it's really growing, and that's the reason. I mean, just local, fresh, good flavors, things like that. So this slide is. Down to business. The average craft beer drinker's tab is $15.98, and I know they got that from this chart. The average check, yes, $16. It's $16 higher. So on average, the craft drinkers spend $60.16 per check versus $44.18 average check for premium segment drinking. So you've got an increase of $16. Placing your craft tap handle in the most visible spot on the beer maximizes profits. Both segments average 17% tip, but craft drinkers tip off a higher base. 21% of premium drinkers can be traded up to craft beer. So training is really important. What we like to do is bring the staff down to the brewery for a tour and just teach them about beer. They can hands-on. They can touch the malt and the hops and the barley malt, the hops, and show them what we do with the water. And they just love that, because then they can go back and sell not only our beer, but they can sell, you know, all the other craft beers, and they know how it's made, so they kind of have a passion for it. So I think that's really important, and that's what's nice about having a brewery and selling locally, as far as inviting staff down to the brewery, because that really helps train the staff. Craft versus domestic profits. Now, Ted Golden's here too. He's our sales guy, and I used to do sales way back when we opened in '96. And I remember, you know, it was really tough, because who are you? You know, 4 Peaks, what's this? You know, fancy beer, it's too expensive. Why am I ever going to buy that? You know, I think back then our price was like $89, I think, and you know, what was Bud Coors was 50, 60 bucks, something like that. So it was really hard to talk to the managers about, you know, why would you buy this beer? Well, you can charge more. And then I remember I would draw, you know, like a little graph out, and this kind of does that. You know, you sell it for $5, and there's 124 16-ounce pints in a keg if you have no spillage, which that's you know, you probably get 110 if you're lucky, and maybe, you know, a couple for the bartender after hours. So you're going to bring in $620. So they're using a cost of $125. Your gross profit's $495. You do 4 kegs a month. You're going to bring in almost $2,000. Do that over a year, $23,000. Now compare that with the premium beer, you know, Bud, Miller, Coors, and you know, sell that for $4. You can see the math. The important thing I would say about this is volume. You know, they probably sell quite a bit of the domestic. So when I say domestic is what I'm talking. It says premium here, as far as the Bud and the Miller and the Coors. If they're selling a lot of that and they take it off and they put a craft beer on that doesn't sell a lot, well then obviously they're not going to make money. So I think what's important is that when you do put a craft beer on, make sure that you get some volume out of it. You know, make sure that you sell at least a keg a month. You know, hopefully more than that. But you know, if it doesn't move, you got to try something else. And that's the important thing. You're going to make more money, but make sure that there's volume on that keg. You don't want it to sit there. It's going to get old. The lines, you know, you got to clean the lines every month or so, or 2 weeks. If the beer sits in there and, you know, it's just going to get stale, and it's not going to be very good, and the customer's not going to be very happy. So if you know, don't be selling, you know, older beer. So make sure it moves. And if it's not moving, try something else. Call your sales rep, and they'll you know, bring more samples in and other stuff, and ask around too. The other thing is, go around to other bars and restaurants and ask the managers and stuff, what sells, what's moving right now, what's hot. So that's the important thing with this is, yeah, you make more money, but make sure it moves. Okay. So the latest is craft brewers currently provide an estimated 100,000 jobs in the U.S., including serving staff and brew pubs. Growth of the craft brewing industry in 2010 was 11% by volume and 12% by dollars, compared to growth in 2009 of 7.2% by volume and 10% by dollars. So 11% volume, 12% dollars, that was 2010. Currently, mid-year 2011, craft brewer dollar sales were up 15%. So it's actually gone, it's even growing faster than it was in 2010. Let's see, the craft brewing sales share in 2010 was 4.9%. So that's what I was talking about, the 4.9%. Back, 10 years ago it was 2%, and now it's up to 5%, and it's 7.6% by dollars. So that 4.9 is by volume. And right now there are 1,753 breweries operated for some or all of 2010, the highest total since the late 1800s. And if you remember back, I said there were 4,000 breweries back in 1873. So about halfway there.